They form very thick stands.
At 306, it used to be full of cattails and beautiful things down there. And of course, across the street, there used to be beaver and all these wonderful animals, and they trapped all the beavers, got rid of them. And now we've got all that awful looking grass sticking up. We have none of the cattails left, and I noticed when you go by, you never see a red-winged blackbird in there anymore. They're
Not
all-
even red-winged blackbirds.
They don't
That-
like that grass.
That is there's not going to be much diversity if the red-winged blackbirds don't even like it, right? Yeah. And yeah, that is a phenomenon, especially the Phragmites along Lake Erie. It may be expanding into other areas, but there's been millions of dollars spent around Lake Erie for Phragmites control along.
And the nurseries are still selling that stuff, right?
I don't think Phragmites. There are other tall bloom grasses, ornamental grasses, but miscanthus. There are some miscanthus that can be invasive, but that one's not sold. The purple loosestrife is still being sold in some nurseries. It's so pretty. Yeah, I don't think there is a sterile purple loosestrife, even though it's marketed as such. And they're very hard to get rid of. Yes?
This is kind of following up on what you're asking. There used to be a mitigation bank here in Geauga County, and there's, to my knowledge, there is not an existing mitigation bank. It registers 0 on the budget. Is there something that did away with those, or do you know how we bring it back? Because there is a lot of restoration that needs to be done. And I agree with you, I actually have pictures of what you're talking about on my cell phone. And standing next to me, it's like 17, 18 feet high. And you just drive down 87, it's just every quarter mile, you're gonna run into patches of it. What do we do to get that to come back to the county?
A mitigation bank. Well, a mitigation bank should be perpetual. I mean, this is just to back up a little bit. Under the Clean Water Act, you are allowed to impact wetlands. You can fill and dredge wetlands with a permit. But part of that permitting process is that you need to restore or protect a wetland elsewhere, and that's called mitigation. So in many cases, what happens is that a developer will build a wetland on one location while they're destroying wetlands in another location. Or another way is that a company will proactively build a wetland, restore or create a wetland somewhere, and then sell mitigation credits to a developer. Those creations or restorations should be permanent.
So are those credits that they're earning, are those supposed to be allocated only for restoration purposes? Or are you permitted to use that to fund other things in the county?
No, it is only as a compensation for wetland destruction somewhere.
So who oversees that? Who's supposed to be?
Yeah, the Ohio EPA would be the one that would monitor that. And
You don't have a name or anything, do you?
not offhand, but there's a really poor track record on mitigation banks in Ohio. There was a study done about 5 years ago where the Ohio EPA actually went out and they tracked down some of these mitigation banks that were created in compensation for wetland destruction elsewhere. Some of them they couldn't find. Some of them were ponds. Some of them were little more than a mud flat. Very few of them performed any of the functions that a normal wetland would. And the final report said that mitigation banking was somewhere around a 60 to 70% failure across the state.
So did they do away with it, or is it still in existence?
The scheme has improved a little bit in recent years, so that mitigation has to be successful before the credits are released. So somebody who is operating a mitigation bank will restore a wetland or create a wetland, and a couple of years later, it'll be inspected, and if it looks like it's a functioning wetland, if it has the biodiversity that it needs, if it's got the proper hydrology for a wetland, then the credits are released. So it's a little more rigorous than it used to be. But all that being said, the effectiveness of the mitigation program comes down to people in the field that can actually see what's going on, covering the entire state wherever those mitigation banks happen to be, and the will of the director to send them out and do that. So if you don't have the will and if you don't have the personnel, then it may not function very well, and you can end up with a lot of poor mitigation banks.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you still have a question?
Yes, filtration in the wetlands, take out nutrients. Could that become ineffective, be saturated to the point like an air filter in your house or a water filter?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and there's a lot of scientists that are asking that question. How much phosphorus can a wetland consume and do that sustainably? You know, is it gonna wear out after 5 years? I'm not sure I have a definite answer to that, but in the 25-year history of the Olentangy Wetlands Research Park on OSU campus in Columbus, it's still removing phosphorus and nitrogen. Part of the issue may be the loading that comes in. So if you're putting a heck of a lot of river water through a wetland that's only a few acres in size, and there's a heavy phosphorus load coming in, and it only spends a few days in the wetland before it is discharged, that may be very ineffective. So size and proportion can make a lot of difference. So there's a lot of scientific questions to be answered there, and it's still not known. So, yeah, but a 25-year track record is pretty good for the data that is there. Unfortunately, there's not many research facilities that are able to check all of the different parameters for what we want to do. So we need more places like that, and it's coming slowly, but it's not cheap. Yes, sir.
Ray, from what I understand with the wetland mitigation, that is dictated by watersheds, not by counties, correct?
The location of a mitigation is by watershed.
Yes, so the
That-
counties don't actually dictate where that comes from, it's done by the EPA through the watershed.
Yes.
Okay.
I think their goal is to put it into the same Huck 8 watershed.
Yes.
That hasn't always been the case, and sometimes there's just not a decent opportunity, available land suitable for restoration, and it used to be much worse, but they do try a lot harder now to keep it in. Now that could change a little, because it looks like what we're moving to, the model we're looking to, is the in lieu fee mitigation banking process, which is a mitigation bank that is done in advance of anybody draining or filling wetlands. And the idea is that these are done on a fairly large scale, so that it's more cost effective to put 50 or 100 acres into wetland. Well, if you're going to do that to compensate for 50 or 100 acres of development somewhere, you may not be able to fit that into the same Huck 8 watershed. So they may be allowing it. So that means that your watershed loses those functions, and it's all legitimate. So that could happen. That's
Okay.
true. I don't know what the right answer is. I know that there's a lot of benefits to in lieu fee mitigation banking, these large scale, well thought out, well planned and executed and monitored by responsible entities over a long period of time. If there are fewer of those, they can be monitored better than if there's a lot of little ones scattered all over the place. So there are advantages to the in lieu fee program. We have yet to see how that's all going to play out. Yes?
Hi, Ray. Ray, maybe you can comment on this. In relation to the Geauga Park District, the Geauga Parks, there was a private organization that bought mitigation rights to some land that the Geauga Parks purchased. And one of them is the Pine Brook Preserve. I know at that time they required any drilling rights to be bought so that there would be no future drilling there. But the sad thing, you know, that land, Geauga Parks got paid or will get paid a lot of money for selling those mitigation rights, and they're not planning on using that for protecting more land, unfortunately. And the sad thing is that because of them selling the mitigation rights, some wetlands somewhere else will be destroyed. So that seems kind of a sad situation. What it means is a net loss of future wetlands because of that.
Yeah, so it is kind of an enabling program. So if there was no way to compensate for wetland loss, it might be more of a challenge or more of a speed bump for development to take place on wetlands. So if you've got a robust in lieu fee or mitigation banking program and there's credits just waiting to be sold, then development and wetland impacts elsewhere can move ahead pretty briskly. That's the downside of the program. I think that's always going to be the case because as long as we have a Clean Water Act, there's going to be a mitigation program of some kind to allow development in wetlands. So the idea is, how do you do that where you have the highest quality wetlands in perpetuity as a result, and even a possibility that the amount of acreage in wetlands will be augmented overall, because many of these wetland impacts, the mitigation is 1.5 or 2 to 1. Or if it's a high quality wetland, maybe even as high as 3 to 1 in area. So if we have a good program, we could see more and higher quality wetlands. They may not be strategically placed where we would want them, but it could happen. Back here again.
I assume erosion control is always good for a wetland, and I wonder if you know of any lists of the best plants for erosion control?
Oh, boy. I hate to speak to that just off the cuff.
There's got to be lists somewhere, right?
Yeah, something that's really going to dig into the soil and hold really well. I'll have to think about that. I'm sorry, I just can't do that off the cuff.
All right, we're sort of slowing down on questions here. Let me give another commercial, and then Ray will hang around and talk to people, and the group from Geauga Parks will hang around and talk to people.
Okay.
And thank you, Ray. Thank you. First, Gene Henry, thank you very much for arranging this building for us and being our sponsor here. We appreciate that. Over on the table there, you'll find a couple of sign-up sheets. Protect Geauga Parks is sponsoring something called Stewards of the Park, that we're asking folks who are regularly in the park to sign up to keep an eye on what's going on. We've identified trees that were marked for cutting that we followed up through the prosecutor's office on to find out what was going on there. And it was a mistake, just an oversight by a neighbor, so nothing happened. But the prosecutor looked into it. Who knows? But it's important that we be in the parks. It's important that we report. Sandy's got the sign-up sheets, and she's trying to coordinate that effort. So take a look. If you're in a park regularly, sign up to be one of our stewards. Also, because fundraising is always an issue, we're sponsoring a challenge. Sandy and I are pledging money for every mile we walk in a park, and our plan is to try to hit every park and every mile. We did headwaters on snowshoes, first ones through the park on snowshoes. That was a lot of fun. And I have to say, Ray, before I go too far here, I got caught up. I lost track of you after I started imagining a beaver on a donkey and a cowboy hat, but that was just Barb mentioned the petition. For those of you who are interested, we did have a petition that we circulated, over 2,000 names on it, that we hand carried down to the legislature. We asked that Judge Rendell be removed. We asked that the way of appointing board members be changed. The response from most politicians was, well, we'll never get this passed, so I don't know that we want to do anything about it. We don't like to introduce things we don't think we can get passed. We are going to publish on our website the addresses of all your local legislators. We'd suggest that you write them, you call them. We'll publish visiting hours that they're in the county. We suggest you stop in and say hi. They're always surprised when people stop in and say hi. As you may know, Mill Creek Park down in Mahoning County got one of our folks, Aaron Young, went from Geauga Parks down to run Mill Creek, and now they're under attack. We have met with people from Mill Creek. We are coordinating activities with Mill Creek. We have contacted the folks who have a similar group in Cleveland, and we're coordinating with them. We're going to try to put all the pressure we can on legislators across the state, saying this is not just a local problem. You may have noticed our friend, the Honorable Judge Timothy J. Grindell, has written a series of letters. He attacked us in the Voices of Nature. He will deny that he's using public taxpayer money to attack us, but somehow it's been Voices of Nature, folks. He's also attacked MacArthur again. He's attacked Rob Allen, that some of you know from our times that we spent at Kent State. So if you take a look at those letters and you want to respond, it would be a nice thing to do. As you also know, we've had 2 new board members since the first of the year. I don't know how many new board members this makes. We keep getting new ones. How many is it? We got 8, 7, 6, 27? Pick a number, any number. And it may change next week, so who cares? Currently, we have Mr. Gertz, whose idea of conservation is that he cut all the trees on his property and replanted them. And he wants to introduce the Asian catfish, white amaranth, into to the lakes around here to keep the algae down. He's okay. He does his best. Lynn Barker is a coach, pitched a perfect game for the Indians some years back. His resume when he applied said he wanted more recreation in the parks. Ms. Dotari comes to us from West Geauga, where she killed off a bunch of programs that cost the school system money, and they're probably going to have layoffs now and move some funds around without authority, and that's all having to be cleaned up. So we have a lot of issues. At the last board meeting, we were told that we could only speak to the agenda, and if any of you saw the agenda, there was absolutely nothing on it. Item 1, item 2, item 3. Well, I want to speak to item 3. I don't know what it is, but I want to speak to it. And we're going to have to sign in and write down on the sign-in sheet that we want to speak. And they didn't say we'd have to identify which item, but I'm sure that's coming. And they will choose who they hear from. When somebody in the audience said, well, just a second, what if I hear somebody say something I want to respond to? She was basically told she was out of turn. So basically we're being told to sit down and shut up. And, so we're going to have to take a look at what we do there. Upcoming issues, we're going to present a sustainability program to the commission probably this week. We are resisting the appointment of John Oros to the NOACA Rural Advisory Board as the Geauga County Conservation Specialist. John Oros, in any event. We have an advertising program, thanks to the generosity of one of our members, that we will be running some new advertising. You ought to keep a lookout for that. So what we're asking is keep up the letters. Start making phone calls to your legislature. Start writing the new board members. Let's stay on top of these people. If you can come to April 12th, yes, Sandra? April 12th, next board meeting?
I'm sorry?
April 12th, the next board meeting?
Yeah.
April 12th, 10 in the morning. They keep moving the date, the time and the date around. Come to the board meeting. It's educational. Alrighty, Ray's here. I'm sure he'll be happy to answer questions. All the board members were introduced. We'll be happy to chat with any of you. Sign-up sheets for stewards of the park, sign-up sheets for the challenge. Thank you all for turning out. Barb, you wanted to add something?
Ray was very honest about not saying that people could also sign up to become members of Ohio Wetlands Association. You had the back table as well today, as well as renewing their membership or becoming members of the association.
In honor of the judge's birthday.
One more last thing. I wanted you to know, I watched the commissioners meeting in which they picked those appointees that you had applied for. Next time, if you're gonna apply for anything, you should email every single one of us so we can appear in that commissioners meeting to support you. You were the most qualified person to come to my meeting, and you were completely set aside. Just because of your personal problems. I just want you to know, we would all show up if you can't come. Okay?